Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my most humble pranams at Swami's lotus feet, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, welcome to this 57th edition of Online Samarpan. Let us all invoke Swami's presence and begin this session with three Omkars. Om. Om. Om Shri Sai Ram. Today, as we all celebrate the Aradhana Mahotsavam, expressing our love and gratitude to Bhagwan for all the grace, guidance, and blessings that he has been showering on us, he has shown one more example of his ultimate grace by giving us an opportunity to listen to Brother Ravi Mariwalla, a chapter from the story of his glory, how Swami has touched Brother Ravi's life and guided him all through during his more than 4 decades of association with Bhagwan. Brother Ravi Mariwalla hails from Mumbai and he was blessed to be part of Bal Vikas and the Pre-Seva Dal. It was then in the year 1979 as a Pre-Seva Dal when he got opportunity to speak in Swami's presence twice during the same year, once in Mumbai and then in Puttaparthi. From then on, brother developed a strong urge to study in Swami's college, and Swami blessed him to become a student of the Sri Satya Sai Institute in the year 1982. Brother went on to study in the institute for 9 years, and during this time, he was blessed with many close interactions with Bhagwan and also accompanied him to Kodaikanal and Chennai. Brother was also blessed to receive gold medals on 3 occasions from the divine hands for distinction in MSc, MBA, and the most coveted all-rounders gold medal. Brother says the highlight of his time with Swami came when after finishing his MBA, Swami told him to join the Sri Satya Sai Super Speciality Hospital in Puttaparthi. There, brother served in the cardiac department in various roles, including being a full-time clinical perfusionist. Brother Ravi deems it his blessing to share with the community his learnings during his stay with Bhagwan. Without further ado, I would call upon Brother Ravi Mariwalla to take us through his journey with Sai. Thank you, Sai Ram.
Om Shri Sai Ram. With loving and grateful pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet, thank you for this opportunity and thank you for that warm introduction. It always takes me back to those most memorable years that we had an opportunity to spend at Bhagwan's lotus feet. But today is a really special day. It is much more beyond my personal journey and my personal learnings. And I feel truly blessed. It is not a matter of coincidence as far as the blessing, has found me as one of the speakers. So I take it as a duty to sort of raise the bar in terms of the conversation and the discussion to highlight what the Sai Avatar did for us, and small or minimal as our perception and understanding of him may be, we have to broaden it, we have to grow it, and we have to also grow into that image of universal consciousness that Swami really represented and wanted to raise our consciousness also to vibrate at that frequency that he was at. it is so as I look back at this opportunity, the first thing that strikes me is that, like it must be for many of you, my own journey also started in Mumbai. And as a Balvika student, and as a school goer in Bandra, Mumbai, Swami really picked me up and started that transformation journey in a small way. And it has led me to land in a place today which is so different from what I would have ever been able to imagine. And I'm sure that is true of all of you, because spirituality is uncharted territory. However much you may pore over the pages of the Vedas and the Vedanta, you cannot understand how that journey from the car, which you sat in the car of logic, is totally powerless when you reach the ocean of love. That car of logic that you are sitting in, and with which you go to Swami and you start to analyze him, you find very soon, as you get to the shores, that the four wheels of your logic are starting to struggle to navigate even the sands of that great ocean. And then you start wondering, how will your GPS work in the ocean? How will your engine, which is starting to sputter, get you through this ocean? And that's when Swami comes. Swami the Savior, Swami the Messiah, Swami the Avatar entered our life and gave us that higher vision. But it took a lot of courage, not just for Mumbaikars, but for any human individual, to step out of that car of logic and to look for the boat of bhakti. And when I think about what Swami taught me as a student, and I saw him teaching the same thing to many, many of our Sai students and devotees over these most pleasant and warm years of my personal sadhana and journey, I can see that the summary of all our journeys is this, what Krishna called in the Gita Anubhava Gyan, right? As much as you may read Satyasai Speaks or Vedas or Gita, the single most important thing which he came to give us was this Anubhava Gyan. It's not a treacherous, difficult word. Anubhav, we have Anubhav of so many things. As you walk the crowded streets of Mumbai or New York, you have experience of so many different sensations, people, smells, sights, and you're constantly taking it in. We don't ponder about the fact that most of our life is spent ingesting sensations and other stimuli from the doorway of our senses into our mind. And when you and I and millions of other Sai devotees took that step, when you were on the sands in the car of logic, and you realized that I cannot get through this ocean in this car, I have to dump this car. And that car symbolizes all the sensory stimuli, all the common way of working, all the way that we developed through school, parental counseling, teachers, and friends. What they taught us was to navigate this world with the help of what you can see, touch, feel, smell. And all that is symbolized by this car of logic. But when you saw that you cannot go any further in this car of logic, if you have to make some sense of this journey of life, that's when you took a very big step. That's when I took a very big step. And that's when, what is that very big step that we took? We made a decision to step out of the secure feeling that we had sitting in that car of logic, which we could see was becoming totally useless. And that step was to open the door and to take a step into the ocean, because the boat of bhakti will not come close to the car of logic. The boat of bhakti is in the water of the ocean, and you had to enter the ocean. You had to feel for some time that insecurity of being neither in the car nor in the boat. And that is what we call the development of faith. Those are the formative years that you and I and millions of Sai devotees have spent developing that faith during the life of this great avatar, where inspired by him, attracted by the message of a higher purpose, you took that great step which billions, not millions, billions of other individuals in this earth were not able to have the strength to take. You stepped out of the security of that car of logic onto the mushy sands, and then into, as the waves were breaking, you stepped into that ocean, and then you were able to enter into the boat of bhakti. And what happens in the boat of bhakti? It is a boat. It is not a ship of bhakti. It is the boat of bhakti. And that is how the faith that you developed to open the door and step out of that security of the attractive but useless car of logic, that same faith that you developed is holding you in good stead. It is the same faith that, as the boat of bhakti is rocked by the waves of the ocean, is keeping us all going today. And the miracle of Sai is that he takes us through this tumultuous ocean, this treacherous ocean, this difficult journey in that small boat of bhakti. And that is the demonstration of the power of God, the power of divinity, which constantly transforms small, impotent, seemingly powerless human beings into powerful instruments of His. It's not for nothing that Jesus Christ said, a mustard seed size of faith can move mountains. It is not the quality and the quantity of your faith, but it is the fact that you had faith in one so supreme, in one so great, in one so loving, in one so compassionate. And that is what matters. It doesn't matter what metal is placed in front of the alchemist, whether it is copper or iron or corroded iron. The alchemist knows the secret of converting that base metal into gold. So every time you think and the mind tells us that, oh, I'm such a ordinary person, I'm not fully able to follow Swami's teachings, it does not matter. It does not matter. Those are just the waves in the boat of bhakti that you are feeling. What is important, that all of us are in our boats of bhakti, and you are surely moving across this ocean with Sai with you. So before I become too philosophical, let me also show you some proof that, just like all of you, I also started my uh, journey in Mumbai, and how I, from that time onwards, started. And this is not an extraordinary achievement. because it is not our achievement. It is not the magic of the human being. It is not the accomplishment of an individual. But these two images that you see, it is not a coincidence. Swami, with humor, with lightness, with love, is helping us grow into his image. And don't imagine for a second that the Swami on the left is becoming the Swami on the right. Not at all. It is the other way round. It is the Swami on the right, which is the metal statue which somebody sculpted, which is becoming the sweet Sai on the left that you and I know. And think about that metal statue as the aspiration that you and I had, and that you have to move and become the loving Swami with the mole on the left cheek and the curls that we worship. But at the same time, it is also not a physical journey. It is nice to talk in these analogies, but it is much beyond a physical journey. It is a journey which Swami started us up on way back when he waved his hand, as you see here. He was raising the consciousness of the masses that came to him. And what proof did we have of this? The only proof that we had was the stirring that we felt in our heart. As I felt one day when I, as a seventh grade boy, totally uninterested in Swami, went to Dharmakshetra along with my mom, and being so disinterested, I was probably the last of the last people in Dharmakshetra. If there were 25,900 people there, I must have been 25,900 in the count. I was sitting way back, but that image is so important. That image is so embedded, because that, though I did not know it, and I don't know so many things in this uncharted territory, in this uncharted journey of my spiritual growth, but I know that as a little boy, when I saw Swami come towards the end of that pandal, as we call it in Mumbai, close to where we had that makeshift canteen at that time. Now, of course, things are very different, but it was all unstructured. There were all those bamboo sticks from which they would make the aisles for Swami to walk. And when I saw him raise his hand and wave it, though I was a totally uninitiated, what I would call unspiritual person, I knew that something in me had changed. And I remember when I met my mom after the darshan, both of us sort of felt that we had found God. It's not as if we had any idea what God is, but we were sure that if there is anything like God, this must be it. And then so many different things happened, and I'll just flash some proof before time runs out. But this is a very beautiful opportunity that I got in 1979. You can see how that uninterested boy on the left is sort of half-heartedly, you know, bowing to Swami, but I had no clue about the journey that he is going to take me through. He took the garland from my hand and put it around himself, and as I spoke, he infused that grace. We are so used to describing things in human terms, but I have learned now, being with Swami, that he was not just looking at me, as we call it in the picture on the right. He was infusing me with Sai consciousness. He was changing my heart. In that body of that teenager, he was bringing in the foundation of transformation and self realization. And then you can see the fan on the left of Swami after he materialized Vibhuti, and he cautioned me so lovingly not to hurt myself on that footstool because it had pointed edges. Then he made me sit on his left and he massaged my spine. And I truly believe that in that contact by Swami was the transformation that I see unfolding in my own life even today. And it is not that the transformation is only mine. The transformation that happened to me and is still unfolding is just a symbol, just an indicator of the power and the reach of the Sai Avatar. There are lots and lots of stories I can tell you, but I'll move on and just give you a little bit of a glimpse of the life of a Sai student. So, in the photo on the right bottom, you can see how we were all after a game of football, where we were all perspiring. We gathered around Swami and noticed when we came away from him after the photograph that we had left telltale marks of our perspiration on his robe. That was the proximity, that was the love, that was the oneness that Swami wanted us to have. And while he demonstrated that through the medium of the body that he had incarnated in, today I'm tempted to think about that proximity, that oneness that he wants with all of us beyond just that body. Then you can see on the photo, in the photo on the left, how he inspired us. We were crammed into that small interview room, but nevertheless, that interview room is the prized possession. Those experiences are the prized possession which we can never get back. But what was it that he was teaching in that interview room? In this picture, you can see Swami sort of demonstrating that how people dress up and anoint themselves and all of that, right? And that's the mirror that he's holding in front of us. But any Sai student who's been in those sessions that would last 2.5 hours, and we would be laughing, he would materialize things, he would regale us. But at the end of it, I remember many of us who had been in the interview room, when we came out, we would say, "Hey, I counted that Swami used the word Atma 30 times." And somebody else would say, "I counted, no, you missed many times. You must have dozed off." Swami actually said the word Atma 45 times. So make no mistake, while he was regaling us, we were laughing. We had so many glimpses of divinity and so many glimpses of what it is to lead an inspired life. But make no mistake, the message was always around the Atma. And as I have followed Swami and continued to dive deep into his discourses, that is the thing that has stayed with me. And when I started by telling you about this Anubhava Gyan, right, which is experiential knowledge, Swami was never a theoretical academic sort of communicator. I remember that he used broken Hindi and broken English. He never tried to become a communicator who is acknowledged for the goodness of his language. Rather, he was a heart-to-heart communicator. He would he would communicate in the way that never missed its mark. And he demonstrated to us that it is not the finesse in the language, it's not the beautiful choice of words that matter. It's the intention, it's the purity of intention, it is the nobleness of the heart that mattered. And I just want to tell you that in one of those interviews, like you see that picture on the left, Swami looked very hard at me and said, "Hey, Mariwalla." And he would sometimes trim that Mariwalla name down to Mari and say, "Mari, today you are in the interview room. Today, Swami is in the interview room. But tomorrow, the interview room will be in you, in your heart. Tomorrow, Swami will be in your heart." And it has taken me these 3 or 4 decades to understand that while he was regaling us, while there was humor, there were miracles, there were manifestations, but that is the core of Swami's teachings. That what I am giving you here in this room in Prashanti Nilayam, remember that that is always available to you. Not just the room is available to you, my teachings and even myself. I am available to you, Ravi. I am available to all of you who are attending this session. I am available to all of you who are not listening to this session. And that is the reason why he took the body, and that's also the reason why he left the body. And just as you and I remember this day that year, right, when in 1940, on October 20th, which we call Avatar Day, and he said to that family, "I am no longer your Satya, I am Sai, my devotees are calling me, I have my work to do." And then he sang Manasa Bhajare Guru Charanam. And this is a sort of slide and a vision that we want to bring to our attention on Guru Purnima, right? But this is what we have to remember today. He told us, "I am no longer this limited 5 feet 4 body with the mole and the curls and the orange robe that you recognize as being Satya Sai Baba, the second of the triple avatars. I am no longer willing to accept that limitation." And why am I not accepting that limitation? Not because I am limited by the way you define me. I have always been transcendent, but I want to break that limitation in your minds. And that is why he decided to leave the body after having told us that today you are in the interview room, you are in Prashanti Nilayam, Swami is in the interview room. Tomorrow, Prashanti Nilayam will be in your hearts. The interview room will be in your heart. Swami will be in your heart. And then he said, "I told you this many times. Now it's time to practice." So, this day, that year is very important for the Aradhana day because you and I decided that we are going to now make that switch from the car of logic to the boat of bhakti, and we are not going to look back. And we are not going to look back. How much ever our boat of bhakti is shaken by a wave in the ocean, we know that Swami is going to see us through. It is that transformation, it's that transition, it is that journey with faith and love, as Shirdi Sai used to say, Shraddha and Saburi. So you and I have to have that faith and devotion. And in spirituality, there is nothing else. There is nothing else. So if you're looking for the next teaching and you're going to the next guru, we are also mistaken in doing that because it is those fundamentals, it is those basics that Swami, when he used to repeat it, the Sai students, we used to sometimes feel bored that, oh my God, Swami is saying the same thing. And he used to often say, "ఇప్పుడు ఫోర్స్ నుంచి వస్తుంది, తర్వాత సోర్స్ నుంచి రావాలి. Today it's coming by force, We were all trying to control our senses. We were all trying to make it in time for darshan. We were all trying to give a letter to Swami, right? That was all force. And we never realized it because it was such a sweet sort of attachment that we had to Swami. But today we know that it is to come from the source. So think about this Mahamantra of Swami, that yesterday it was all from the force, driven by force. What is that force? That force is the fear of loss. We ran to Swami fearing that we would lose him. But today we are opening up to the reality of the Sai consciousness. Why did Swami leave? Because he felt that I have accomplished much more than my mission. In these few million Sai devotees that are the cream of the billions of human beings who inhabit the earth, I have already planted not just the seed, I can see the sapling of Sai consciousness blossoming in the hearts of these Sai devotees. Now there is no point my being on earth. That's how I feel, that he left his body having accomplished his job, having surely planted the seed of Sai consciousness in our hearts. He went happy and comfortable with the idea that the Sai students and the Sai devotees will come together and disseminate my teachings. Let my love flow into the world. Let my universal consciousness that I taught them become a part of the way that they look at the world. And then I also want to touch on the fact that, I don't know how many of you know this yourselves living in Mumbai Shahar, but you have the prized possession of Dharmakshetra and Satyadeep right there. And I don't know how many of you even know this, but out of the three key ashrams that Swami established outside Prashanti Nilayam, all of you know there is Satyam, which is Dharmakshetra, and Satyadeep. Satyadeep, it is the light. What does this light stand for? It is not just a jyoti as you and I tend to translate that to. The deep is the consciousness, that consciousness of Satya. So Swami, out of the three ashramas that he established outside of Prashanti Nilayam and Vrindavan, the primary ashram that he established was also the biggest challenge that he undertook. So while we pat ourselves on the back for being Mumbaikars and originating in our story and our lives in Mumbai, we also know that Mumbai is the toughest challenge that Swami undertook. And that's why he said, let me start early with Mumbai. And he established the Mumbai ashram in 1968 on May 12th. He established Sundaram in Chennai later, and he established Shivam in Hyderabad also much later. So you are holding on to a dear possession of Swami. You all symbolize the fact that Swami laid claim to the territory of Mumbai. He laid claim to the heart of the Mumbaikars as early as 1968. He established Satyadeep on a hill, and in that discourse, he spoke to when the first World Conference was held there. He said, I know how difficult it was to set up this whole area. It was on a hill, and from that hill, you could see a large part of Mumbai. And while he congratulated and blessed Mr. Indulal Shah and others, he said at that time It is not possible that it is just one person's effort. It is the effort of so many people who have contributed, and he called it the Yogadan. He said, इन्होंने योगदान दिया है. So it is that contribution that all those great souls made, inspired by Swami, that has given you and all of the world that incredible lighthouse in the middle of the worldliness of Mumbai that you can go to. But again, don't fall into the trap of feeling that it's only in Dharmakshetra or Satyadeep that you can recharge your batteries. You can recharge your batteries right here, right now, by bringing into your focus the redeeming grace of Sai consciousness. I also have to cover a little bit of specific content, so I'm going to tell you about a very dear uh, part of my own journey. I have three big chapters in my journey. One was in my pre student days, and by this you can guess my age, of course. But in those pre student days, I had some very dear Balvikas gurus, great people who, who sort of helped to wean me from a feeling of belongingness to the worldliness. And I give lot of credit to these great people, Mr. and Mrs. Nanavati, the Valechas in Bandra, in whose house the Balvikas was held. And then in the second chapter, they inspired me to think that I should join Swami's college. And I always wanted to be one of those hundreds of boys clad in white who would march into the mandir. And that dream came true in 1982. And then, dumping the thought of doing a medical career, I continued to study in Parthi and went on to do my master's in science and then my MBA. And then during the end of my MBA, when Swami actually invited me to join his hospital, which was up until that time just a drawing on a paper, I found that my mind, which had all through wanted to stay with Swami, I gave up the idea of doing a medical career. Now, all of a sudden, I found that doing this MBA course, I was feeling like going out into the commercial world and having a commercial career. And this is how the mind, which Swami says, right, bumps and jumps. I gave up the idea of being a doctor, but now I was trapped in the idea of being a manager. And this is how we substitute one thing for the other. And spirituality is just the recognition and the awareness of the frailties of the mind. Once you recognize the frailties of the mind, you will start cringing and cribbing before Swami and saying, Swami, please help me. Swami has empowered you and me with all the knowledge, all the Anubhava Jnana, and He gives His grace now and then. But by and large, you and I have to call that potential that He has already invested in us. And at that time, when I was hesitating and I was not able to see a path for myself because I had gone back into the car of logic and I was not able to see what I would do in in a hospital. So Swami sent word to me with Professor Nanjundeya, and he said, Professor Nanjundeya called me out of the class and said, Swami knows that you are hesitating. And it was not at all that, hey, you have to do this. But he said, Swami wants you to make up your mind. This is a great opportunity, but you have to make up your mind. And that is so important for me. It was not that because Swami was talking to me and had healed my father after his heart attack, that in any way Swami was insisting that I do this. Swami wanted it to come from my own heart, but he was going to give me the help to make the right decision. So that evening when I went into the interview room, I remember clearly Mr. Khayal Das was there. He was the doorkeeper of the interview room. And then he said, "What are you doing? Go, Swami is sitting inside waiting for you." So with much trepidation, I made brave to get up to approach the interview room. I slowly turned the handle of the interview room door and I peered inside. Swami was sitting alone. He was not reading any letter or anything. He was seated on that interview room chair and he beckoned to me to come inside. And brothers and sisters, it does not matter what he said or what happened. Bring to your mind. It is not just my experience that happened in 1990. It's not that. It is the redemption that Swami brought through those interactions, through those experiences, which are now available for the elevation of all of us, not just me. I am a puny, unimportant human body which will not be there in a few years, even. What he was teaching, what he was giving, that inspiration is foundational to the transformation of man into God. As I went into the interview room, the love that I could feel, the assurance that I was feeling totally changed my mind. And he said, "क्या सोचा हॉस्पिटल ज्वाइन करने के बारे में?" And I said, I was hesitant. I was still sitting on the fence. Imagine the foolishness. And this is also important as we talk about the inspiration of the Sai consciousness. We also need to remember and recall the foolishness of human endeavor, the foolishness and the rootedness of human thought in analysis, in limited knowledge. We trust ourselves so much. We're standing in the presence of one who represents that transcendent universal consciousness, which, if you combine with, you are redeemed, you are released, you are liberated. He can give you that lift, that transformation that may take you thousands of lives to attain. He can give you that in a second, but you are holding back. So, as you remind yourself of the greatness of Swami, also remind yourself of the foolishness of your mind and what it leads you to do. And as I told, I just didn't say anything. I was suddenly very discreet, which was nothing but clearly demonstrating my hesitation. And then Swami, knowing that I was just being foolish, but that I had signed the contract with Swami, I had prayed to him, I had begged him in some previous life, probably, that Swami, I want to walk this path, limited and wayward as I am, even set aside my hesitation and you guide me. Probably I told him that in some birth. And then this great Lord who has guided and redeemed so many said those beautiful words. And he said, "हमारा आज्ञा है, hospital join karo." And then he said, "Good for you, good for your family, good for your country." And at that time and for many years, I thought Swami is just referring to the goodness that will come out of my joining his hospital. Not at all. Not at all. Nothing could be further than the truth. The limited human understanding just relates to entities or two facts that stand in the temporal analysis together. I was just relating the fact that if I join the hospital, I was taking it as a bargain. I was taking it as a sauda, as you say it in Hindi. That was again trying to misinterpret the universality of Swami's message. He was not at all telling me that by joining the hospital it will be good for you, good for your family in an ordinary way. He was telling me, and this is what I have started to realize now after 96th birthday, where I had a small experience myself, that Ravi, it is not that you had to join the hospital. It is just that to receive my grace, you had to follow me unhesitatingly. And despite the fact that he taught me that so many times in the past, one day I went into the interview room, we were a few boys, and Swami started just scolding me. I couldn't understand. And he said, तुम साई स्टूडेंट है, कितना लंबा बाल रखता है, क्या करता है, स्वामी का नाम खराब होता है. And I was like, seriously, Swami, I had a haircut day before yesterday morning, and you're seeing that I'm having keeping long hair. But nevertheless, with much, feeling of rebellion in my heart as an adolescent would have, I was sort of, self-righteous and saying, how could Swami do this? But nevertheless, better sense prevailed, and I went the next morning to in the hostel. There's a small room allocated to the barber, and the barber didn't come that day. So I went all the way to the mandir, and I went to the barber because I knew that in few hours after college I would have to go to mandir, and how would I face Swami? The thought never occurred to me that I can hide from Swami. That is the most important thing. When Swami gives a guidance, we have to figure out how to do it. So I went to the barber. The barber was very surprised. He says, "Sir, Monna cut chesam kada." In Telugu, he said, "Only 2 days back I cut your hair, right?" I said, "Yes, I know, just cut it." So I had a second haircut in 2 days. And then I went more bravely and courageously to Mandir. And sure enough, Swami called me inside with another group of boys. And then he was so happy. He was so pleased. And as much as I was perplexed by him scolding me for keeping long hair, I was equally perplexed that he is happy with me now that I had a second haircut. And this is very important because we always think that, Swami is trying to teach some big Vedantic lesson. He is not trying to teach any Vedantic lesson. You don't need to learn or follow any Vedantic lesson. You don't need to think what is universal consciousness or awareness or transcendence. You don't need to. And then when we were getting up and leaving, Swami said, "Kya da Mari, tum sochta hai?" Swami was wanting you to have a second haircut. And he made a very, very meaningful statement. He said, "I am that master who will never tell you the next step until I am satisfied that you have followed my earlier command." So, in the enveloped and hidden in the story of the two haircuts, which perplexed me both times, was the clear command that, hey, you cannot fool me. You cannot second guess what is good for you. And don't worry, depending on me is not some sort of dependence. It is the most sure way of progressing in your spirituality. So he was just teaching me. He was not testing me. He knew I would go and have a second haircut. But he was telling me that next time you are tested by the need to make a decision, just follow what I say. Don't bring your limited mind into the picture because you cannot figure out what is good for you. And brothers, sisters, in this modern world, I live in the US. In a Western way of thinking, the biggest challenge that we as human beings have is trusting the wisdom of another human being. But we all know that Swami was not just a human being, he was the encasement, the beautiful, loving, extraordinary encasement of transcendental reality, of primary consciousness. And that equally gave us the chance that we would misunderstand him. Often he said that under the candle there is a circle of darkness. So delusion, illusion, misjudging him would often happen. And equipped with that learning of the second haircut, I went into the interview room, and when he said, Hamara agya hai, I felt very pained that Swami, I had to make you say Hamara agya hai. What is one life? What is one few span of years of one individual? Why am I thinking so much about myself that you had to ask me to make my mind up and then you had to call me and tell me? And when we always think about ourselves, right? Even in front of Swami, we always thought, why is Swami not calling me? Why am I not getting these chances that the other students are getting? It was always about ourselves. We never thought in this broad way that this ocean is trying to give each person in this human crowd that is assembled a little bit as a gift, a little bit of that interaction, that memory, that sacredness of his contact to as many people as he can. We always thought, why am I not getting it? Why am I in the back row? Why is Swami not giving me vibhuti, not taking my letter? And he was always trying to teach us that lesson of thinking of him in a different way. And finally, I never looked back. I had this opportunity of serving at the hospital for 14 years. And when Swami used to ask me to speak, many times I would start narrating miracles or incidents, and then Swami would say, Chal chal, ipudu hospital gurinchi cheppu. Enough of telling my stories and miracles. Now tell a little bit about the hospital. And while he never wanted us to advertise, many times the trust members approached him and said, Swami, we'll put an advertisement about the hospital. Swami said, Chi, chi, chi. And then many times this came up that Swami will charge some registration fee. And he said, what are you talking? I am spending crores of rupees and you want to take some 8 rupees, 10 rupees registration fee. What is the point? The sacredness of my work cannot be measured by putting ads on the television. I'm not interested in that. But I want to tell you in a few minutes that the hospital, to me, encapsulates a very remarkable story of Swami. Are you able to see my slide? This slide about the Swami breaking the coconuts?
No,
Can one of you? No?
no.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Now you should be able to see it.
Yes, yes.
So I'm not going to flash many slides, but I just want to tell you the negativity, the doubt, and the limitation of our minds, even though we were around Swami. So this is a picture. You can see the bhajan boys in the background. You can see our famous pujari who was so fortunate. Swami made this big announcement during birthday, and he said in 1990 November, he said birthday time, he said 1 year from now I will announce the completion of heart surgery in the Satya Sai hospital. And everybody's mind went berserk. Swami was actually just toying with our minds, really speaking. He was showing us how you can be, even in Swami's presence, but you will not leave the frailty and the limitedness of your mind. And we can say it is Vajra Sankalpa, but that time everybody forgot this term Vajra Sankalpa. Many people I know very well, leaders also, and it's not a commentary on that. It's a commentary on how difficult this task was, even for people to imagine that great as Swami is, that he will be able to accomplish this. And then fast forward, right? That was November, and then April of the next year came, and you can see. And I'm not telling you somebody else's story. I was in Kodaikanal with Bhagwan. We had finished our MBA in the month of April, and Swami took us. And this picture is taken on April 29th, 1991. You can see Swami so excitedly talking about the architectural plans of the hospital. And soon after this, Colonel Jogarao, I personally saw this. I am not telling you this story from Satyasai Speaks. I was there in front of Swami. Colonel Jogarao, whose contribution to Swami's mission is unprecedented. He must be with Swami now. He, old as he was, he kept on telling Swami, Swami, Randy, please, Randy, come here to this room. And he said, what? Why do you want me to leave the boys and come? And, to the left of Swami, just 5-7 feet away, there was a room where Colonel Jogara and Anil Kumar sir, I think, used to stay. And there were two beds there. So, Anil Kumar, Colonel Jogarao took Swami there. And then in 2 minutes, Swami came back, and Jogarao sir thought that I will tell Swami something in private. And do you know what our great Swami did? In 1 minute, he came out and he said, do you know what Jogarao is telling? And Jogarao was like, Swami, please. He said, Jogarao is saying that there are no funds for this hospital. Funds are not coming. There is no money to build this hospital. And then he turned around to Jogarao and he said, Niku Enduku, why are you getting stressed out? Why are you worried? Idi na pani, nen chuskontanu. This is my job. This is my work. I will take care. But see, our human mind and our doubt doesn't end so easily, right? So Swami sent us on June 3rd or 4th from Brindavan after we came back from our Kodai trip. I think after we came back on May 5th or 6th, he gave us MBA boys, about I think 17, 18 of us, over 15 interviews on the Jhula in Trai. And he inspired us. And then 6 of us opted to join the hospital. And then he booked our tickets to Delhi. He arranged for us to get trained in Delhi. Excuse me. And he actually gave us beds, he gave us shaving kits. And then we went to Delhi. He wrote 2 letters to us and he sent us a telegram as well. And then he asked us to come back. We reached Prashanti Nilayam on our return on November 4th. And I'm not telling you the rest of the story of the letters and the blessing and all that, but I just want to tell you only on the hospital. So this is how the hospital was built. Fortunately, somebody has captured these pictures and they are on Radio Sai, because this is truly the most marvelous construction in history. When we came on November 4th, this is what greeted us. This is the corridor. And I said, okay, maybe this is, we had gone to that huge institute, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and probably, Swami used to joke and say, Anta Pata Vasanara, these are all your old tendencies. So staying there for 6 months, eating Delhi food, our minds had been again sort of little oriented towards the world, and I had forgotten the power of Swami. So I went into the hospital, we walked around, then we asked, Swami sent us on November 4th, I think. So we went to the hospital, and obviously because I had trained to operate the heart lung machine in the operation theatre, I asked everybody, where is the operating room? And then somebody showed me the staircase, but there was no way to go on that staircase because the slab was being laid. So I said, seriously, on November 4th, I'm not able to climb to the second level, which was the first floor, because staircase is not ready. So they said, yeah, you have to go from outside. The cath lab equipment is being, massive equipment was being installed in the cath lab. So I went from outside the building. Can you believe it? And I went to the operating room. To my dismay, when I entered what was supposed to be the operating room, the tiling and all had been completed, the sockets were there, the gas pendants were being installed, but there was nothing in the operating room. Nothing absolutely, except the gas pendants and the lights, operating lights. And I said, my God, after having seen the infrastructure, the manpower, and the other things that I required to do cardiac surgery, I was like really scared in my heart. And then just see the beauty of Swami's work and just don't take too much stress. We don't have to solve the problems of the world. We have to just be like the magnifying glass, concentrating the and converging the rays of this powerful sun that Satya Sai Baba is. You don't have to become the sun and bring the power of Sai to everybody. You just have to converge those rays of Swami's power and the work will be done. But that requires positivity. And that is what I had lost after visiting the construction site. And then what happened? There was no canteen in the hospital. So in one bus, we went back to the mandir to get our lunch. And as we came down from the bus, there was a flurry and a stir. And Swami used to live in 1991 in the Prashanti Mandir, right? There was no Kulwant Hall. There was, Swami was not living in the Purnachandra Auditorium and all that. So Swami had come out in the balcony. See the timing of grace, right? Grace is like that. Grace always comes in the right time. Swami had come out on the balcony. We were hesitating. Now we thought we had become employees. We can't just run like kids like that. So we were hesitating, standing near the bus. Then we said, no, let's go to Swami has come out on the balcony. So we went to the balcony, under the balcony. And Swami is seeing us. He asked me, कैसा था हमारा हॉस्पिटल कैसा था? And I was about to make the mistake of my life. One mistake, I was hesitating to join the hospital, and here was great Ravi Mariwalla about to say, bluster, and to give his analysis about the construction site, and then to say that Swami kaisa hoga and all that, right? Foolishness. This foolishness comes to our tongue first thing. And then, fortunately, just like he said, हमारा आज्ञा है, good for you, good for the family, good for the country. He said, ऐसा हॉस्पिटल दुनिया में किधर भी नहीं. And this is not the picture, but I just put that picture. See the grace of Sai. Not only he came into our lives, he inspired us to follow him. We would have been like stray sheep if we had not followed this shepherd. But then, when we spew forth all the negativity born out of our stupid mind analysis, he stopped me. Before I could utter all that negativity, he said, ऐसा हॉस्पिटल दुनिया में नहीं. Simple, broken Hindi and broken English. But he got the message through. I would have felt like a fool if I had said what I was about to say, because history tells its own story. We did 4 open heart surgeries on day one. One of them was a tetralogy of Fallot, which is one of the tougher surgeries to do in congenital heart surgery. Over the next 14 years, those 4 patients who were operated in Swami's hospital kept coming back year after year, and we recognized them as the patients who were operated on day one. Not only that, brothers, sisters, Swami is never about sensationalism. I found out from other doctors who were flying in from New Delhi to work at the hospital that when Escorts Hospital came up in New Delhi, which is a very famous hospital, they did one open heart surgery for 1 month. Only one open heart surgery a day for 1 full month. Why? Cardiac surgery is not a joke. Swami was making it possible by his divine will. There was no water. Even today in Puttaparthi, my parents live there. Power goes for so many hours. I remember one day power went for 14 hours. Not one surgery was impacted. There were oxygen strikes, but oxygen was never short in Swami's hospital. There was no nursing manpower. Swami built a nursing college. We were worried, even in the US, they advertise blood of this blood group is needed. But Swami's patients never had scarcity of blood. And all this, the greatness of Swami's work is that it is all done in silence. I always thought that the Swami's hospital was built as a model, right? And that Tata, Birla, uh, Reliance, others would step forward and feel that, Arey, how is a private organization doing this? Shouldn't we, as corporate India, step forward? There are so many poor people, they are dying due to lack of availability of treatment. Shouldn't we step forward? But nobody did. And in 1999, just 9 years later, Swami announced the setting up of one more hospital. And as all of you know, right, that hospital went forward and is our Bangalore hospital, which is bigger. Our cardiac surgery in Puttaparthi is 2 operation theaters, which do about 1,000 surgeries a year. And there is a 20-bedded ICU. But the Brindavan hospital had 4 cardiac theaters. Cardiac surgery is one of the most expensive surgeries to do, most high risk. It has the biggest requirements in terms of hospital stay, in terms of resources. But this story that I told you, brothers and sisters, is not historical. It is not over. The lesson from this story and from my personal uh, alignment with Swami on this is that there is a car here: compassion, action, and redemption. Right? Remember this. This hospital, these other efforts that Swami made, the efforts are not important. What they depict, what they show you is the compassion that is at the heart of these efforts, and the fact that he put compassion into action. And then finally, all of these efforts were meant at our redemption. So, as I draw to the last few minutes of our time, I just want to tell you one thing, that we are always thinking about this. And this is not my own idea. Swami one day came out from the interview room and told us this, which just flashed in my mind. He said, "You are always thinking about this." And we said, "Now where is Swami leading us?" Force and source, okay, we heard it many times. Now, over the decades, it's starting to make sense, force versus source. But we said, what is this? Where is Swami leading us? But we used to cherish those moments because as we sat there with our chemistry, physics, math books outside the interview room, we would be waiting for Swami to come out. And when he finished with the interviews, he would come out, stand there, and then talk to us. And during one of those occasions, he was giving us the highest philosophy, the highest spirituality, but in simple language, which was going directly to our heart. And he said, "You are always worried about this, but I have come to show you that." So, this is the practical wisdom that you and I have to learn. We are always worried about this. What is this? My body, how I look. Do I have branded jeans? Do I have a branded bag? So when I walk in the airport, everybody from behind is seeing, oh, there's a branded bag. And then my job, my car or cars, how big is my house, how many square feet, how many, then after that we go to how many houses I have. Then to maintain those houses, you got to make sure about job security. Until recently, job security was not a problem in India at least. Now job security has become a problem. So by email, text, you can get relieved, right? So this has always been in our focus. Me, my body, and what my mind tells me to do. And what Swami was telling us was that there is a that. And then he expanded on it. And you all know this. He said, Tattvamasi. Keep that in your mind always. Tattvamasi. Remember that there is a higher purpose, there is a higher reality, and that is symbolized. The encapsulation of Vedantic wisdom is just in that three-letter word, Tat. Tat. That thou art. That. He came to all the love, the experiences, the photographs that I showed you. We played a football match and we were taking that picture with all our perspiration around Swami. That is all good. But Swami was just like the school teacher, just like the mother. The mother holds the sweet or the chocolate and tells you to take baby steps. It's not the chocolate actually. It is the teaching you to walk. In the same way, through these years of the Sai avatar, he incarnated with beauty. He gave glimpses of incredible power with miracles of epic proportion. Then he translated those into societal benefit, again of epic proportion. His biggest miracle was the fact that he reached out to all our hearts, irrespective of which country, nationality, and religion we belong to. And like that string puller, Sutradhari, he pulled us now and then to visit Prashanti Nilayam. But at the center of the whole mission, at the center, at the core, he had only one focus, which is totally well articulated by that single three-letter word, Tat. He was just trying to teach you, don't be so fascinated, so consumed by your this, your body, your mind, your career, your bank balance. Think now and then about the that. And we would have never accepted this teaching had it not come from somebody so brilliant, so beautiful, so loving as our Sai. So Tattvam Asi is that Mahavakya that you and I have to take seriously now. 10 years have passed. Swami transcended his body and wants us to make that transition, not just to close your eyes and again start to visualize the curls and the mole and the orange and the black. That is not what he came to teach. By visualizing him again as his form, you are again limiting yourself. What he wants you to do is to feel that vibration and to exhibit it as love for everybody. So he said many times to us, if you do sadhana from the mind, you will never find Swami. You will never get self realization. And it is that journey, the attraction to the idea of Tattvamasi, that should intrigue us. You can go on doing seva as much as you like, but the idea of seva, japa, and dhyana is to purify the mind and to be the stepping stone for that inward journey. We cannot stop with having made that external purification. For that inward journey, we have to invest in understanding what did Swami mean when he said, don't do sadhana with the mind. He said, the mind is the thief and it puts on the dress of the cop. So if you believe the cop, who is actually the thief, you are doomed. By doing sadhana with the mind, you cannot get a grasp, you cannot get a vision. This was an exception case that Swami came. It's like the eclipse. The sun is always shining. When you step out of your house, do you need to think? You check the weather. Is it going to rain today? Is it going to snow today? But you never check. Is the sun going to come up today? No, you never check that. You don't need to. You don't need to call some call center and ask, hey, is the sun going to rise today? No, no, no. It's beyond you. So, in the same way, you don't need to worry about Swami's mission, about Swami's work. What you need to worry is, what is your Mahavakya? Are you making that resolution today? This is not a celebratory day. You're not celebrating Swami's departure. You are worshipping. You are reinforcing all the merit, all the experience, not just your experience, everybody's experience. Sri Kasturi's experience, Gokak Sir's experience, Joharao's experience, Anil Kumar's experience, all the experience, that body of knowledge that Swami built up, the body of enlightenment that Swami built up. You're bringing that to bear today and find your Mahavakya. You are in the lighthouse of Dharmakshetra and Satyadeep. Light that Satyaka Deep in your own heart. And then you will banish the worldliness of Mumbai. And today, as we salute this great master, who not for a minute thought about credit, his body, his words, his time, everything was invested just for our sake. Just for our sake. He lived and he gave up his life also only for our sake. In the giving up of his life, once I spoke in Canada and I said very proudly, there are 3 examples of Swami having revived people. And somebody in the audience, that's the problem when you make speeches, right? Swami would correct us, but you can also get corrected by others. He said, "No, Mr. Ravi, I'm sorry to disagree with you." I thought, now what is coming? He said, "Actually, there are 17 recorded instances of Swami reviving people." And I said, "Theek hai. If I had said three and it is four or five, theek hai. Margin of error is not much." So much margin of error. I'm a Sai student. The people, when they introduce me, they say he lived with Swami for 23 years. How can he be so much off the mark? We are all off the mark. We are all off the mark. You just felt, in the interview room, when Swami was standing next to me, rather, I was standing next to Swami, and Swami was comparing our heights. And he's saying, "Neeku kuda chala ekku height ledura. You are also not very tall." And I remember when Swami said that, looking to my right and breathing into that halo of hair. That was the proximity he gave us. That was the oneness that he had. You go next to some president or prime minister, the machine guns will come out. Swami was the one who wanted to mix with us. When the crowds gathered, he saw only the individual. But we translate that into a physical connection. He was having that unity at a consciousness level. So today, on this sacred day, when we remember him, we rejoice not at his departure, but we rejoice at the fact that out of the billions, he chose us. It is clear that he chose this small few millions of people to have the direct experience of Sri Sathya Sai Baba. That is certainly something you should pat yourself on the back for. But after patting yourself on the back, next thing we have to do is have the courage to get down from the car of logic, walk the mushy sands, put our foot in the ocean, because the boat of bhakti is not going to come to your doorstep. You have to take that step. And when you get into the boat is going to wobble. It doesn't give that security of the ship. And that is the beauty of bhakti. That is why Meera left the palace and got happiness going from small temple to temple, singing about Krishna. The security that she had was far greater than the mansions and the palaces could offer. And that is what Swami is offering us. We are so preoccupied with this. He has brought into our consciousness this idea of that. So, Tat Tvam Asi, that should intrigue us, that should drive us. And if you really want to salute, we all say we are saluting Swami. If you really want to salute Swami, what will make him happy is to make your Mahavakya, make your resolve, and to walk that path. Like I showed you, compassion, action, redemption. If you want to build on the compassion of Swami, you got to act. I got to act. And then what is waiting for us is redemption. With that, I'll close. And thank you all. I know it's night in Mumbai, and so many of you are online. Congratulations for that. But then, as Sai students, we made so many sacrifices, what we call sacrifices going to Parthi. None of those count as a sacrifice. None of those were big things that we did. Those minor things that we did are unimportant. The grace of the Guru that we got and are getting doesn't compare with the small things that we did. So thank you all for joining. And, may Sai elevate us. May we thrive and nurture that Sai consciousness that he instilled in each one of us. Recognize that. Turn to that. Switch from the attention on the this to the that. It's so simple. It's so available. But it needs you. It needs you. It needs your choice. It needs your permission to unfold. Switch from this to that, this to that. The higher reality, the higher purpose, Sri Sathya Sai within us. Sai Ram.
Om Sai Ram. At the outset, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to Bhagwan for arranging such a wonderful session today, wherein Brother Ravi has uh, has shown us the has reminded us of our bounden duty to seek the inner view and not the interview. In his talk, intertwined with lots of analogies and experiences, Brother has told us that today we are celebrating the Aradhana Mahotsavam, but what better way to express our love and gratitude to Bhagwan by just following the path laid down by him and making our lives his message. We would like to quickly take a couple of questions posted by the attendees. So the first question goes thus: given that today is Aradhana Day, how should we connect with Swami within when we do not have his physical form anymore? And can you please narrate uh, an experience wherein you felt Swami's presence after his Mahasamadhi?
Absolutely. So the way what I learned, when I visited Parthi for the 96th birthday, there was so much music. My hips were paining sitting on the floor, right? It's been many years now. And I was just thinking in my mind, Swami, why have you called me here? And then he showed me that feeling that spiritual elevation is not what we think it is. Because we read so many books on WhatsApp, we get thousands of messages from different masters. Our minds are cluttered and we are mind driven. We are denying, diminishing, and devaluing the experience that we already have. And that experience shone through in my consciousness. And I don't mean to say that it is extraordinary. I don't have any horns due to that. But what I realized is that I have had that same experience way back in 1986, again in 1991, again later on. And that experience is true, it is available, it is very powerful, but it is very simple. It is not like the books describe it. All this bookish knowledge, that's why I made sure that I may miss out other points that I have written down, but let me not miss out this thing that Anubhav Gyan is the most important thing. Swami didn't come to teach more. He gave 6,500 discourses, but all of them were to create the inspiration for us to welcome experience. So, to your question, today, when he is not in the physical form, but I'm telling you from my own knowledge and experience, all of you, not just these 59 people who are now on the call, every Sai devotee, why Sai devotee? Many other spiritual people too have had a glimpse of that deep inner experience. You have to go back to that. So, the secret of spirituality that I'm starting to understand is that your guru can take you to a point. Finally, it is your effort. And that effort is not like moving mountains, that effort is focusing your attention. What do you want to focus your attention on? No worldly activity requires your 100% attention. You can drop it down to 98% today anyway. Even in a meeting, people are on Facebook or on their apps. They are seeing the notification flashing on their phone anyway. Your attention is never full. That 2%, put it on your inner experience, on that inner connectivity with God, with Swami. So, to your other question, Swami is so wonderful. I have so much to be grateful for. Just in the last 1 month itself, I have had two dreams of Swami, and they are very meaningful. They are very full of guidance. And Swami, this is nothing exceptional. One day, Swami went to Brindavan for a week. We were all surprised. He came back in a week. So, when Swami would come back from Vrindavan, he would just take Aarti and go. That day he went and sat on the uh, chair. So I had closed my eyes. I was sitting right in front of the speaker, very loud, and I had closed my eyes. I was surprised. Swami came down and he tapped my head like this. And he said, "Get up." And he said, "Kitna bar dream mein aaya?" See the communication. He is not giving any introduction, any context, any bhumika, nothing. Kitna bar aaya dream mein? I said, "Swami, 3 bar." In that 1 week, Swami had gone to Brindavan. I had 3 dreams of Swami. And he said, "Dunna pota, Somberi." Dunna pota, one bad title I got. Dunna pota is dense guy. Like our kids nowadays say, duh, right? And then he said Somberi. Somberi means lazy. Why lazy? Because I was not doing my homework. I was not recalling the 4th dream that I had. I was discounting it. Actually, I had a 4th dream in which I got Swami's namaskar only. He didn't talk to me. So then you know what he said? He said, very good communication. And see, so many years have passed, brothers, sisters. What we can remember, right? We just remember these few things, but they shine in your consciousness. He gave the dream, he tapped me, he asked how many dreams, I gave the wrong answer, but then he said, very good communication. What he was telling me is that, boss, तुम तो दोष निकालते रहेगा. You will keep finding fault with God, right? You, oh God, you didn't do this. मेरा लिस्ट है तुमने फुलफिल नहीं किया. Communicate with me. Be in sync with me. That is your job. That is your job. You communicate. I will also come. I will give you answers. But you communicate. So, brothers, sisters, I'm just sharing with you very humbly. How can I take credit for the 2 dreams that I got? It is Him coming into our consciousness. So, at every stage, I have seen that Swami has never ever let me down. It is just my inability to see his hand. It is my stupidity to question him, to question his wisdom and his timing. So, what we can do today is fill our hearts with Sai. Yes, you can fill with talks and videos of Swami and read his discourses and all. That is one level. But there's another level which he was alluding to when he said that is all in the area of force. You can force your mind to read discourses. Now, every day I will watch 2 videos. That is force. Swami was opening us up to a new dimension, our own experience, born out of the connection with Swami. Call that. You don't even need to constantly recharge your batteries by seeing Swami's videos. Swami and you are one. That is the self confidence that he was talking about. That is the self confidence. Self confidence is not that your knees don't shake when you give a talk. So, to you, I'm saying, and it's coming from my own learning after 96th birthday, that I have empowered you guys. You are already in my image. ये सब बात छोड़ो कि Swami has to come. Those dreams and all that will come. That is just to give you validation. Even that is not required. You delight in the fact that you knew Satya Sai Baba, that you were called. Drop all depression, negativity. Like I was about to tell, Swami hospital is not ready. Before that, he blanked me out and said, ऐसा hospital दुनिया में नहीं. So he's telling us now, positivity, belief, self-belief. Before faith in me, self-belief. So you don't have to do anything. You're just this little tilt you have to give when your mind is overwhelming you with attention on your this. You remind yourself that there is a that. That's all you have to do, and everything will be great.
The next question is, as you said earlier, that transition from the car of logic to the boat of bhakti is where faith is developed. How should we strengthen our faith, which gets tested time and again in these trying times?
So let's look very hard at ourselves. You know, in the Christian tradition, because I read a lot of books of Jesus Christ when I was there in Parthi, they there is a ceremony called canonization. Okay, any person who has done one miracle, and if it is proven to the Pope decrees that this person can be designated as a saint, and there should be one day in favor of that person. So that's how you have Saint Francis's Day, Saint Teresa's Day, Saint Paul's Day. Now you go to think about this question. Swami did one miracle. He must have been doing one miracle a second or one miracle a day, or at least 10 to 20 miracles a day. So I don't mean to sort of uh, put you down, but this is what I tell myself. Swami's miracles, what are miracles? They are a sign of the intervention of God in our favor. He changed our destinies. He rescued us thousands of times. Each one of us can write a book. It's just that we are lazy. And we also diminish the value of our own experiences. We forget them. In that 1 week, I forgot my fourth dream when Bhagwan himself was asking. So, how much we are diminishing the value of what we have learned and experienced. So, my humble suggestion is we don't need, if we can't have strong faith after so much he has done, just analyze everything that Swami has done. And you watch those 9 videos of Raja Reddy, they'll make you sob like a child, where he brings out this concept very beautifully. He said, we always analyzed Swami and we experienced our senses. Swami told him one day he was sleeping under Swami's bed. Swami said, Raja, నీకు ఒక ప్రకాశం కనిపిస్తే ఇక్కడి నుంచి నువ్వు శివ డివోటీ, ఇక్కడి నుంచి వస్తే నువ్వు కృష్ణ డివోటీ. రాజారెడ్డి, if you see a light coming from your forehead, you are a Shiva devotee. If you see the light emanating from your heart, you are a Krishna devotee. And Swami became silent. And then Raja Reddy, after a few minutes, saw one light coming from Swami's chest, Swami's heart region. And next morning, what did he do? He fell asleep. There was one big, huge torch Swami had. It was called a 5-cell torch. Swami had kept a nickname, 5-cell torch. Why did Swami need that torch? Because power used to go left and right in Puttaparthi. And all the women, Indian women, we all wear a lot of ornaments. Puttaparthi was unsafe. There was no east block, no west block. They used to live under the trees with their belongings. So feeling unsafe, first thing they did when they came to Puttaparthi was take out all their jewelry, earrings, anklets, everything, tie it in one gutteri and give it to Swami himself. No assistant. And Swami used to carry that, go into one Godrej Almira and put it there, and he would just randomly put it. You can understand, right? Swami would just randomly put it into the cupboard. No naming convention, no labeling, nothing. And then when they were leaving, they would forget. They were packing, they were looking after their children, they would forget. And they would say, oh, yo, the bullock cart has come to take me to Bukkapatnam, I forgot. And they would rush to Swami. And there would be no power. So Swami used to take that 5-cell torch, just shine it, and he would pick up one bag and give it to those people. Obviously, it was always the right bag. So Raja Reddy, after seeing the light emanating from Swami's chest, imagine Swami had gone out for darshan. He took that 5-cell torch and he took Swami's blanket, okay, and he put the torch under the blanket, and he put the torch on, and he was trying to check whether the hue and the intensity of the light that he witnessed last night was the same as could be created by him putting the 5 cell torch under Swami's blanket. And our beloved Swami, who is always teaching, that moment only he opened the door and came inside. And he told Raja Reddy, Idena ni artham, is this what you have understood about me so long? You're living in Swami's room. Nobody in the whole world has this privilege. So Raja Reddy has said, instead of analyzing Swami, where did that light come from? What is that light? How did he how did he do Vibhuti Abhishekam? Tons and tons of Vibhuti by only putting his hand never goes more than his wrist inside. Why is such a big pot? But his only hand is going on it. You have to analyze your way of thinking. Our minds are corrupted by the Kali Yuga. Such a tremendous avatar came and went also. And so if we cannot have faith after him doing so much, so you have faith, you know it. Don't don't think that your faith, I'll tell you one more thing. Doubts come by reading all nonsense that is on the internet and what people tell you, right? That is merely so the don't think of doubts versus faith. Faith is a very big thing. Faith is the reflection of the soul. These doubts that are playing in our minds, don't equate that to not having faith. So doubts, oh, there is Swami is not helping me with getting a job. Those are all the mental activity which is going on in the superficial layer of the mind. That's why, brothers, sisters, it's very important. You can't do that in this 1 hour talk, right? It's not enough to have gone to Puttaparthi and to be his student or to go for daily bhajan. That's just not enough. You have to read his discourses at least now. The message for what we should do is there, but he could not overwhelm us. He never overwhelmed us. He was so sensitive. 1 or 2 paragraphs in every discourse are the mystic guidance for us. The rest of the discourse is about Onam, Krishna Janmashtami, story, but the guidance that he gave us is there. So the faith is there. Don't think that the superficial doubts that we are having is lack of faith. So all this clarity will come to you as you go deeper and have the self-confidence that you have already experienced the glimpse of self-realization. You just have to make it continuous. But making it continuous is not going to be something that Swami does for us. That will happen by our choosing to make that experience continuous, by our choosing not to focus on the this only and to refocus on the that. They will stop asking me questions because they'll say a question पूछा तो पूरा lecture ही वापस दे देता है. Sorry about that.
We would like to just go on, but due to the paucity of time, we will end here. I once again thank Bhagwan for making today's session possible. And we are also grateful to Brother Ravi for making it at such a short notice, for accepting our invite and uh, giving us this wonderful session today. Thank you so much, brother. We will end today's session with Samastalo.
Thank you so much, and Sai greetings to all the brothers and sisters who are there.
Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jai Sai Ram.